And the man himself joins us now, Mr. Brian Kennedy. How are you?
I'm very well, Robin Elliott. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. So you're a busy person. You're just back from Liverpool, I believe.
Yeah, I was doing a little mini UK tour. We played in the Irish Cultural Centre in London and Hammersmith, and then I went down then around the kind of Kent region, and then yeah, we ended up in Liverpool. I did 2 nights in a beautiful little venue there called the Prohibition Studio, and live music just seems to be more popular than ever. And then, of course, as you know, Eurovision fever has hit that city.
So what about the UK and Irish entries for Eurovision this year? What do you think the chances are of them getting anywhere?
Well, look, it's all to play for. I think that every year, hopefully, people do their very best. They put their best foot forward. Certainly, Sam Ryder seems to have completely woken up that competition for England. We have Wild Youth competing for us here in Ireland. I mean, it's all to play for, because the greatest thing about that competition is that it's completely unpredictable. The people that you think are going to do brilliantly, even in the semi-final into the final, you think, oh my God, they didn't get through. I can't believe it. So every year when I watch it, I'm always surprised. How about you? Are you a Eurovision fan?
Well, I'm a massive Eurovision song. I do like May's song. I like the Wild Youth song as well. But of course, back in 2006, you did Eurovision yourself.
I mean, it's scary to think that was 17 years ago this month. And I honestly, Robin, I remember it like it was yesterday. I had just moved into this house where I'm speaking to you from now in Dublin. And so everything was new, representing the country was new. And I stopped being Brian Kennedy, because the minute you arrive in Eurovision,
Yeah.
you are Ireland. They go,
Yeah.
hello, Ireland. Oh, look, Ireland's here, and all of that. So suddenly it's not lost on you that you're representing a country, depending on the country you're representing. So I just had it was a blast. It was incredibly hard work because you rehearse from the moment you get there. Social media was sort of in its infancy, really, in some ways. So everything you did was filmed. Every move you made was filmed. So it was very, very important to go to every party and every kind of gathering to drum up support, to drum up press. And as you might remember that year, Lordy were the big kind of press darlings.
Exactly. Yes.
From
Yeah.
Finland. And also, I called them the Monsters, and then the Munster won the rugby as well. So it was a monster time at that point.
And you did all right. You came 10th.
Oh man! First of all, I had to get us out of the semi-final,
Yeah.
which was no mean feat at all. And then I did get us out of the semi-final into the final. And yes, respectively, I would think number 10 is all right. As I always said to my friends, there's a number 1 in it. It's just 1-0 rather than number 1.
And another piece of Eurovision history, you were actually the 1000th Eurovision entrant, weren't you?
Oh, why am I not surprised that you know your stuff, Robin, for God's sake? I know that is another extraordinary number, isn't it, to be the 1000th contestant in the overall history of all time? That's right. Look, I look back on it with a sense of pride, a sense of fun. It was maybe one of the campus chapters in my life. But yeah, very glad I did it. And before you ask me again, would I do it again? Never say never.
Exactly. And you had Una Healy with you as well, didn't you?
Man, that's the thing. I remember we were looking for singers. Callum McCall was my MD at the time. He was playing guitar. And so we were interviewing, trying to find, really, because all the singing is live.
Yeah.
So you have to find somebody who's, is going to be the best possible singer on the night, who can cope with that level of, pressure. It's a lot of pressure. And in walks this young woman from Tipperary who, of course, she's beautiful and everything, but she had a guitar on. She sang so effortlessly in the audition, and that person turned out to be Una Healy from the Saturdays. So when you do Google me later on, hopefully, when you see that performance, you'll see the wonderful Una, and she's a friend to this day.
And your song was Every Song is a Cry for Love.
Yeah, I wrote that with my friend Callum. I hadn't, we were working on a record anyway that became Homebird, that record, and it just was one of those kind of songs that it had something a wee bit special, but I just thought, well, I don't know what we're going to do with this. And then, things collide sometimes, and suddenly out of the blue, I was approached, would I consider, representing the country? And suddenly we listened to hundreds of songs were sent in. But I didn't ever feel that, okay, that's the song that's going to bring us there. And then that song was around, and I suddenly thought, well, it's a brand new song. No one's ever heard it. So we presented it to RTE, and they were like, "Yeah, put it in the mix." So, and as you might remember on the Late Late Show, then the audience at home decided which song I was going to bring, and that was the one that won the competition.
Later on, we've got Niamh Kavanagh popping up on the show. Of course, it's 30 years since she won Eurovision for Ireland with In Your Eyes, a song that I think is one of the greatest Eurovision songs of all time.
I couldn't agree with you more. And what a singer. I mean, the thing about Eurovision is, certainly we send all kinds of, puppeteers and all kinds of strange things, but Ireland have a great reputation of sending really great singers, Johnny Logan, people like that, and Sutton, Emer Quinn, of course, the person who won it the last time for us with The Voice. So yeah, Niamh, I'm a huge fan of. We've sung together socially as well as professionally. What a voice, and also what a great song. In Your Eyes was an amazing song, I think.
Now, you've got something big happening on the 20th of May in Larne. It's the Friends Goodwill Festival, and yourself and Curtis Stigers are going to be on the lineup.
Yes, and Mary Coughlan also. I mean, it's one of those things now that, Robin, I don't know about you, but now when we look back on our lives, things seem to be collected in decades now, not just years. Yeah. And to think about what happened in the Good Friday Agreement and 25 years ago, and the idea that me and Van Morrison were singing outside the City Hall, and Bill Clinton was, president of America at the time, we've come on in leaps and bounds in terms of, how we are as a country, how we are culturally. So to get an opportunity to go to Larne and stand up there and sing, we're all still here. We're all still very lucky to be here. And just celebrate one more time. I love the fact that these days, Robin, we gather now in large numbers for celebration, not for protest necessarily. And so that's a great thing, I think.
And back in 1995, you first met Curtis Stigers performing at Belfast City Hall during President Clinton's historic visit.
That's right. Yeah, and then we went on. I moved to America, as you might remember, in 2000 to be on Broadway in Riverdance. Yeah. And then I made a record called Get On With Your Short Life. And Curtis and I collaborated on a song, actually, called Don't Look At Me That Way. If you go back and Google it, anybody who's watching this, Google Don't Look At Me That Way. And Curtis Stigers is playing saxophone, and also and he was a co-writer, and he also sings the really beautiful harmonies. So we stayed in touch over the years, and he's just somebody that I admire. We were both long-haired chaps back in the 90s doing our thing, and of course, he had that wonderful hit, I Wonder Why. Yeah. I've been a fan. I'm still a fan. I think he's just really seasoning as an artist himself. So it'd be great to see him again.
And what are your memories of that gig back in 1995? Were you nervous?
Well, you don't get time to be nervous in a way, whether it's that or singing at the George Best Memorial or whatever it is in Belfast. Of course, it's not lost on me that I'm in my hometown. Belfast made me the kind of fella I am, really. So yeah, there was a moment, of course, when I was looking out at that T-junction, and there was 90,000 people there, I think, and 1 billion people watching at home. 1 billion people watched that at home. But again, you're so caught up in it, and I was so busy singing and looking towards Van Morrison to see what cues he was going to give me and things like that. And we sang "There's No Religion Here Today," Days Like This. I don't think it really hit me until I saw the footage a couple of days later, and suddenly you're like I say, you're arrested by this T-junction of people where there would have just been cars before. It was the only traffic were people. Yeah. And then the momentous moment where you think, I know that we culturally have changed gear here. We've gone up a gear that we didn't even realize that we had. So yeah, it was I was very, very moved by all of it.
Now, also on the Friends of Goodwill Festival, Mary Coughlan is also on the lineup. She's a good friend of yours as well, isn't she?
An old friend of mine. I've known Mary for 30 plus years. And again, someone that I admire hugely vocally and as a friend as well. I just think she's incredibly gifted, and people adore her around the world. She's just back from Australia a few days ago from her tour. So it'll just be lovely to get a chance to hang out for the day, do some music together. Maybe we might even think, Robin, that we might do a song together. Let's see what happens.
That would be good. You got to do that.
Yeah, I think so.
You've also been making a movie recently with Cinemagic.
I have. It's called So What If It Rains? And again, given that the temperature of change that's going on in Northern Ireland, we wanted to, of course, it's important to recognize what happened historically in the past, but to also, somewhat throw wonderful positivity into the future and talk about how, Northern Ireland is an extraordinary place in the world. And even Hillary Clinton was talking about it recently in the news, in terms of the great thing about coming out of such darkness is that suddenly the future's so bright now for Northern Ireland. And we wanted to kind of just talk about that a little bit in the film. I play a heterosexual man. Can you believe it? So I always say there isn't a gay man out there in the world who hasn't had to pretend to be straight. So, we've had a wee bit of practice. And I play this kind of old lover of somebody. I don't want to give too much away, but it's just a tiny little love letter to the possibilities to come for Northern Ireland. It's called So What If It Rains? And I'm so proud to be part of it. Myra Campbell, of course, was the writer and director. Did you interview her recently?
I haven't, but I've had Taylor Lally on the show, who's also in the movie with you, and she's a great new performer.
Yeah, indeed. And that's the thing, there's new talent. The little actors, the little guys that were in it, God, I felt so old, Robin. They were like 16 and 17. I'm nearly 57. I'm 40 years older than these people. So I remember in Northern Ireland that they have no concept of. It's so interesting. And then they are literally children not of the troubled, so the untroubled generation. And I love that.
So what were things like for a 16-year-old Brian Kennedy then? Were they difficult times?
When I look back now, hindsight, of course, is 20/20 vision, even though it seemed very confusing at the time. It was a very difficult time in history. I was obviously struggling with identity and sexuality and all those other things too. The Catholic Church kind of had us under their heel, The Falls Road was a very dangerous place to be. It was very much occupied territory. The British Army were everywhere. Literally, our environment was on fire. There was smoke everywhere, usually on a daily basis. You heard about some kind of atrocity on a daily basis. So it felt very, very, very unsafe all the time. And I started then to think, how can I go into the world? What's the rest of the world like? Surely it can't all be like this. So I suppose I was, preparing to get to London eventually. I was preparing to be a singer. I started to sing in local churches and things because that was the only outlet at the time. I was just I was still in my infancy in lots of ways in terms of my identity, in terms of my profession, let's say. But I look back on it now and I remember a therapist saying to me one time, it's a miracle you even survived any of that.
Exactly. Now, you've become a successful singer-songwriter. You've appeared on Broadway. You've written novels. You've performed for President Clinton. But tell me this, is there going to be more acting in the future then?
Well, I wouldn't turn it down necessarily if it was an interesting part. The thing about Myra Campbell's script was that it was so interesting. It was very, it was fresh. It was saying something new about Northern Ireland for a change. And ultimately, honestly, Robin, give the acting jobs to the actors, really. I'm not saying anybody should absolutely stay in their lane, but at the same time, I'm in the middle of recording album number 18. I'm right in the middle of that. And so that's all going great. I've got loads of gigs throughout the year. If something came up that was interesting, I certainly would take a look at it. But like I say, give the acting jobs to the actors, please.
And what about the new album? What can we expect from that?
Well, it's Joni Mitchell's 80th birthday in November. So this is volume 2 of a love letter to Joni from my previous album. So we're right in the middle of recording what will be volume 2 of that series. So that's what to expect. And I hope to have it out by November at least.
Exactly. Well, you're playing the Friends of Goodwill Festival in Larne on the 20th of May, along with Mary Coughlan and Curtis Stigers. Tickets are available from eventbrite.co.uk, or for more details, check out the website, which is midandeastantrim.gov.uk/Friends Goodwill.
And Robin, can I just give a shout out, please, to Wilma Rogers, who of course was the lovely wife of John Rogers, who we lost very suddenly in January. If you're watching, Wilma, we're thinking of you and your family and your grandkids. It was a very sudden loss, and I just want to acknowledge that here with you. He was an extraordinary person, and loads of the incredible musical moments in my career, John was there, with Van Morrison and all of that, Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan, all of those years. So yeah, just a shout out to them, and I'm so sorry for the loss.
Lovely tribute. Brian, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.